Faculty of Applied Science and Technology. My name is Adel Tago, and my colleague is Kritika. Kritika, can you just say your last name for them? Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. I am Kritika Sundararajan.
Perfect. So for our agenda today, we're gonna introduce our group, is what we just did, and we're gonna state the steps taken to create this model, and we're gonna show the output of our code. And in the end, if you guys have any questions, please do email us on Blackboard. So for our first step, we created the class and the class fast and initialize its arrays. So by doing that, as you can see here, our code, we first created the class and gave it a comment and created a public class called fast. And in that way, we initialize its arrays by stating it as the 3 arrays that we needed as part of the project. That being said, it is the students, instructor, and courses. Student having a variable of S, instructor B having a variable of I, and an array of courses having a variable of C, and all of them have, for student, an initialized size of 1000, and an instructor an initialized size of 100, and the course being an initialized size of 40. And then we introduced the static integer to help us manage basically the values for these arrays. What that means is that basically a static integer is basically a variable that stores our integer values that we stated here, and it declares it as static. So once we declare it as declare a variable as static, it kind of exists till the end of the code or the program, and then it initializes the variable and does not get destroyed when the function ends. So from here on, it will go on to Ms. Kritika. Go ahead.
In second step, we add and delete values to the array element. We here use void as a keyword. In methods, void method perform operations without returning a value. In this case, the return value type is return keyword as void. The same process as goes into delete students value to the arrays and add instructor value to the arrays and delete instructor values to the arrays and add course details to the arrays. Delete course details to the arrays. In this case, we use for loop for incrementing the values. If int m equal to 0, m greater than equal to length of the array and increment value. If it is not null, it stay here. If it is equal to null, it goes to other loop. The same process as used in both 6 methods. The second step, it's continued displaying the array elements. Using for loop, each element for an array is displayed in a new line. Void, we call the display student as a method. Then we go to system.out.println. We print the student detail as heading. Then system.printf. We use tab and string value a new line to the space. We give name, id, location, phone number as titles, and we use for loop. Int m equal to 0 and s of m it's not equal to null, increment value m plus plus. If it is not null, it process in the loops. If it is equal to null, it goes into next step. Then we use tab and string value to the call the methods s of m dot s name, s of m s id, and s of m dot s address, and s of m is phone number. Then system dot out dot println is in the next line print. Same process as included in instructor array elements and display course array elements.
Okay.
Then step 3 is declared variables and use constructor. As the declared variable, in order to store the name, the program needs to declare a symbol called a variable. A variable represents a value stored in the computer's memory. Rather than using x and y as variable name, choose perfect names. In this case, we use for a name and address for addresses to let the compiler know what name and address are specified the data types. That is the kind of data stored in a variable, whether integer, real number, or something else. This is known as declaring variable. Java provides simple data types for represent int integers, real numbers, characters, and Boolean types. These types are known as primitive data types or fundamental type. We use here also constructor also we use here. A constructor means a class provides methods of a special type known as constructors, which are invoked to create a new object. A constructor can perform any action, but constructors are designed to perform initializing actions, such as initializing the data fields of object. Installations. Installation, on the other hand, is all about assigning the value. Assigning to demonstrate, we create user class the name and ID properties. In this process, we create declare variable as name as a string and id as a int and address as a string goes well. Then we assign initializing the variable s name equal to name, s id equal to id, s address equal to add, s phone number equal to phone number. That goes on add course detail also.
Perfect. All right. So the same thing goes for the other classes. So the first class that we had was basically the student class, and we declared a variable and we used a constructor. But we also needed to do it for two other classes that we created. That being said, it's for the class courses. We did the same thing, and its variables being, as you can see here, the two integers that we have is a C code and number of section, and the normal variable, which is CNAME, which is a string name right here, and CNAME as well. That is the only variable that does not have an integer. And as you can see here, we created an array of students who are enrolled in the courses as being S for new students as 1,000, as you can see in the beginning of the slides. And then the instructor being IN, as an instructor who's teaching the session of this course, basically. And then we initialize the variables to give us an output for the class of courses. Same thing is done as well for the class of instructor. We declare the variables just the same as Kartika stated. We show the strings being the I name and the address, and the integers being the ID and the I phone number. And if they were to have an address, which is I address, it would also be, I believe, an I address would be, are we missing? No, I address is right here as being A. As you can see, we gave them each a variable. So string name, integer ID, string A, integer PH being phone number. And at the end, basically, add course details. This is a void method that Kartika explained as well as previously stated. And that's pretty much it for these three steps for these three classes. Go ahead, Kartika. This is the reference variable.
In sixth step, we used reference variables in FastTest class. Reference variable is objects are accessed via the object reference variable, which contains reference to the objects. Such variables are declared using the following syntax. Class name object reference variable. Here we use fast as a object name, fact as a reference variable. A class is essentially a program defined type. A class is a reference type, which means that a variables of the class type can reference instant of the class. Fast fact equal to new fast. It's a reference variable. Accessing an object's data and methods. In OOPS terminology, an object's member refers to its data fields and methods. After an object is created, its data can be accessed and its methods can be invoked using the dot operator. We here use the dot operator to access the method. Fast dot add student s of 1, fast dot add students s of 2, fast dot add student s of 3, fast dot add students s of 4, fast dot add instructor I of 1, fast dot add instructor I of 2. also known as object member access operator. Object operator are two types. Object reference variable dot data field references a data field in the object. Second one is object reference variable dot method arguments invokes as a method of an object. Here we use second type. We call the S1 method in here.
Okay. That's good to go. Yeah. So the last step, which is continued, is adding the 2 new courses, and that's this. It follows the same thing that was stated in the reference variable. Just as we added, we called 2 new appropriate methods. We do the same thing here, and add 2 new classes, C1 and C2, and basically we call them Java and C++. And if in case that there is new students to be added, we call them SS1 and SS2, and having an instructor 1 or 2, as stated previously by Kritika. And that's pretty much it. And step 7 is just to show the system printout of how our source code will look like on Java and how we modeled it. As you can see for the 3 classes that we have. As you can see, for student being student details, for instructor being instructor details, and for courses being course details. And as you can see, we showed that the names, ID here, and location, and the phone number, what location they're at, what phone numbers they have, and what their ID is, and their names. Same thing goes for instructor, ID, location, and phone number. But for course details, because it has a different variable, it's going to go with course, code, and section only. And using this method, we would basically pull out the whole code source, and it will show as it's stated here. And we really had fun creating the source code. It was a bit difficult, but by far it was very understanding of how Java works and how we can use it in our daily life to create better, websites for maybe Shopify or any cart database that we might need to use it for. But yeah, so far this is all we have for this project. And if you guys have any questions, please email us. And that's the end. Thank you very much. My name again is Adele, and my colleague is Kartika. Thank you. All right. Good?
Good.
All right.